Hey guys, we're back in the LBC and out of the 714 for a little bit. I don't know if you can see it, but Castle Croydon's behind me. We talked about that in another video. We're about to go around the corner to the Skinny House. Okay, so we're walking up to the Skinny House. According to Ripley's, the skinniest house in America. Take that, Virginia, who claims to have the skinniest house. They don't, we do. 860 square feet, 3 stories tall. Originally, this was half timbered. It looked like something out of jolly old England. But the only space outside of the house is that front yard there, which is only 18 inches from the street. You can barely see it from here, but back in 1931, Newton Rumman built this house. And the reason he had this piece of land is it was given to him because someone was in debt. And his friends challenged him, do you think you could actually build a house on that lot? And he did it. Now inside the house, it actually has a lot of mahogany woodwork. It was originally really beautiful. And it's built kind of like a ship inside. You can tuck things away into compartments everywhere. But supposedly they say it's very little. Like I said, there's no yard. That's it right there. 860 square feet, 3 stories, and there's a deck up there. I wish it looked like a Harry Potter house though. And one last thing about this skinny house. The workers who built it were out of work due to the Depression until this job came along. And the fame from building this house resulted in all of them getting other jobs afterwards. So there was a good purpose to this house, besides just getting a record. It actually gave employment. Okay, we're now on First Street down by the ocean. There's some amazing, amazing buildings and houses and apartment buildings down here. Really, really cool. Do you remember seeing the Long Beach Airport streamlined modern building? Well, turn with me, take a look at this right here. This apartment building is streamlined modern as well, built in the same style as the airport. Long and low, meant to look nautical, round windows, decks, metal railings, meant to look like a ship. Reminds me a little bit of an ocean liner sitting in the ocean with the big expanse of grass in front being the ocean itself. Years ago when I was here with a group of students, we were walking by and one of the residents said, would you like to come in and take a look? That was pretty cool. Can't do that today, but let's go take a closer look. Now this building was built in 1939. The name of the architect has passed into history. Nobody knows, but there are 5 units inside, which tells you, look at the size of that building. Those are big units. Look up above on the top floor. Do you see those round windows? Very much like a ship, along with the railings there, the smooth, streamlined sides. Just a beautiful building. And inside, amazing fireplaces and detailing. And look at this ship out on the ocean of grass. As we turn on the streamlined modern building though, look at the incredible different styles of building here on First Street. Amazing apartments. So many different styles of houses and apartments. You can tell what time of the year it is. It is Mother's Day this weekend. Right around the corner up here, you'll see we're right by the ocean. So we're looking back at First Street, but that's Ocean Boulevard right there, and some more amazing houses and apartment buildings. But behind me, and what we're turning towards, is the ocean. If you look out that way, see the Queen Mary in the distance. We'll talk more about that later. But then look here, you'll see that there are some islands, some resort islands, perhaps. Right here, just offshore, inside that breakwater that keeps the waves from coming down. Now those islands I mentioned are actually 10 acres total for 4 islands. They're also known as the Astronaut Islands. They're named for NASA astronauts who died in service. One of them is Grissom Island, built in 1966. The rock around it is taken from Catalina. The center of the island is sand. But they're made to look that way so they don't detract from the beautiful coast. They're made to look kind of like a resort or condominiums. The islands have trees, plants, modern colors, sculptural looking like modern buildings, waterfalls even. They're lit at night, and the drilling towers that drill for oil out there actually rotate, and the trees rotate with them. Oil drilling will stop soon, and the question is, will those islands finally be used for recreation? We're heading north up the coast, and we come to the Lone Sailor. This is a replica of the original in Washington, D.C. at the U.S. Navy Memorial. That one was established in 1987. This one was added in 2004. It's modeled on an actual sailor from the Navy. And this is a special spot for me because Long Beach used to have a naval shipyard here. And my cousin was one of the guys during World War II that worked on ships that would go into battle. And they were built right here in Long Beach. And that same cousin went on to join the Marines. And he fought in the South Pacific. So it's a special spot for me and so many Americans. This is the Lone Sailor Memorial at Bluff Park, Long Beach. And once upon a time, this site was where they had the Naval Petty Officers Club during World War II. So it's a great site to honor all sailors and all people who served in the Navy. Looking across the street, we come to basically what was a model home for an apartment building that was never built. Doesn't this look like a piece of apartment that was taken out of an apartment building and just set on the land? Well, that's what it is. Okay, we're back on First Street. I'm gonna head back towards the Mustang and we're gonna saddle up. There's just so many beautiful houses around here. Gorgeous examples of different styles of architecture. Let's head back to the Mustang. Well, we're still in Long Beach. We're continuing to move up the coast, which is actually west at this point, in a cute little residential neighborhood just up by the 405 freeway. But I want to show you a neat little house right here on this street on Chestnut. This house was built in 1937, and you might remember the Long Beach Airport and the apartment building we saw down by the coast were the same style. Once again, this is a tiny house, but you can see it's still streamlined modern. Look at that round porthole window. It definitely looks to be the same type of ship design, ready to go out to sea. But in this case, it's a tiny little boat, not a huge one. We don't know the name of the architect. Again, lost to history. But a really cool working man's home, still being built in the streamlined modern style. So right now I'm standing in front of the International Tower, and this building was built in 1966. It was pretty cool because they had the entire building poured out of concrete in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Take a look at this thing. It's actually 32 stories tall, and some locals call this the beer can. I actually think it deserves a better name than that. I love this building. Large units are actually semi-pie shaped. I looked at some floor plans a while back and thought, I could live in something like this. This is actually one of my favorite buildings in Long Beach. Now the grounds here where the International Tower is located was once the home to the El Mirador Hotel. Now, as I said, once they started building this thing, they built it pretty fast, 2 weeks. Basically, it went up about 1 foot per hour. At the very top of the building, they talked about putting a revolving restaurant, but that never happened. And in the 1980s, this building went condo, and so now people own the individual units. Over here, you can see that there actually is a pool. Now I feel like I'm peeping a little bit, so I'll back away. And we'll continue on towards the Riviera, which you can see the top of right over there. Here we are at the Riviera building, built in 1929, 15 stories tall. For many years, this was the second tallest building in Southern California, second only to LA City Hall. So this Riviera was designed in 1929 by Richard King, and he was the architect. And the idea was that you could actually buy your own apartment, which was a novel idea that was becoming popular. It was built right before the stock market crash, however, and that was not so good. If you look closely up there, you can actually see some grotesques right there in the corner of the building. There originally were like 30 grotesques located on the Riviera. The top of the building is made of copper, which is why it's green. The Riviera was inspired by a 16th century French chateau, but it's actually built of poured concrete and reinforced with steel. Once upon a time, this was really the place to be. In addition to the regular apartments, there's 2 penthouses, and Charlie Chaplin, the famous movie star, lived here at one time as well. Very, very cool, very, very neat. Love to get inside this one day. Now here's a much newer building. This is over 20 years old. This is the Pacific. I actually walked through some model homes here once years ago, or model condos, and I didn't realize at the time that there's a very tragic story, at least tragic if you care about historic architecture. So the Pacific condo building was formerly the Pacific Coast Club. It was built in 1926, and it was a Norman-style castle, really. It was a family club by the beach, very elite. The building was actually protected as a historical structure, but as you can see next door to it, there was the house of Adelaide Titchener. And she's called the Mother of Long Beach, and she owned both pieces of property and sold the one for the Pacific Coast Club. It wasn't deemed earthquake safe, and it was demolished in 1984 and replaced by those condos, but it's considered to be a really sad story by the locals, and this story is really what started the Long Beach preservation movement. Now, the building we're looking at now is a house done by Green and Green. Now, Green and Green are most famous out in Pasadena. They did the Gamble House, which is owned by USC now. But this right here was built on the ocean bluff. And it's basically a California bungalow, meaning Japanese arts and crafts style. And again, Adelaide Titchener called this home. And it doesn't really go too well with that condo building next door, as you can see here. And Miss Titchener, who lived here, loved Japanese culture. And you can see that reflected in the building here with some of the details. She also established a lot of other buildings in Long Beach, as well as nonprofit organizations. Now, this has a green tile roof meant to evoke a Japanese style. It originally had a garden tea house, a Japanese pond with stepping stones, as you might have seen in the first picture. And in the 1940s, it went vacant. And it can't really be put back to what it originally was due to the additions that were added. It really did a lot of damage to the original house. But I do have a great story about this place. So I won't tell you the whole story, but in the 1970s, when I was a little guy being babysat one night, my parents actually went to a Japanese themed party here because they knew the people who owned the house at the time, and it was in much better condition then. Don't you wish it still had this amazing Japanese garden without that condo building next door? Maybe I'm a little biased, but I think so. Okay, this building was built in 1932. Can you tell what that is on top? That's a coffee pot. And this was the Coffee Pot Cafe, now called Salon Vendors. They restored it a little bit, but it's part of something called programmatic architecture, which was very popular back in the years before World War II. And with programmatic architecture, the business would have a building constructed that looked like what the business did. So they served coffee here. Other buildings that were programmatic, they sold pianos, or a music store, they'd make you shaped like a piano, or any type of thing. Programmatic architecture. There's the coffee pot. It's a little bit like a lighthouse too. We're standing outside the former Masonic temple, which was built in 1927. I don't know if you can tell, but it's been converted to loft for living. It was abandoned for many, many years. And the reason it was abandoned in the 1970s and then not really used much till the 2000s was because it didn't meet earthquake standards. It had to be completely rehabbed. If you've seen National Treasure, you might remember that the Masons were an organization that Nicolas Cage belonged to, the guys that were trying to get a secret to treasure that was on the back of the Declaration of Independence. Well, as I said, this building is now used for living. However, they have preserved the interior lobby. One of the main reasons I wanted to stop here is because of the columns and the exterior. This is Greek and Roman Revival architecture. Can you tell what style of column it is? Do you remember? Okay. That is actually a Doric column, and there's 6 of them. But inside, The interior was mainly Egyptian and Roman architecture. And let's see if we can get a view inside the temple lofts. Absolutely beautiful. Look, it's George Washington. Come around the corner though, you can see that this old building is actually the Dolly Varden Hotel with a bath in every room. And the reason I stopped here is because my grandfather used to stay here coming down from Los Angeles as a salesman servicing stores in Long Beach. And that tells you something about how times have changed. It used to be that, you know, if you're gonna go as far away as Long Beach from Los Angeles, you'd spend the night. And of course today, you would just commute. We're in front of the Ocean Center building built in 1929. And you can see that they are rehabbing it right now. And we are right on the bluff above the flatland along the ocean down below. So these are the ocean bluffs right here. And 4 years after this building was built, there was an earthquake. I'm gonna show you something as I go around the corner here. And from this angle here, just around the corner, you can see there's a tower at the top. There were originally 2 towers, but again, 4 years after this was built, you have the 1933 Long Beach quake, and one of the towers came down just after it was 4 years old. And you can also tell we're going downhill off of the natural bluff down towards the flats along the ocean front. And you can see down there's a California Pizza kitchen, and there's a theater. Well, it used to be in this office building, which was a very modern office building, there was an arcade running through the middle. And by an arcade, I'm not talking about like a gaming place, but actually a long corridor, Roman style, with arches at the end. And you could walk through that corridor and down to the flatland down below. And instead of having a theater and California Pizza kitchen down here, you actually had an amusement park called the Pike. And the Pike had the best roller coaster on the West Coast. It was a wooden roller coaster, double tracked. It was called the Cyclone, as well as a lot of other games down here. And it was very popular with the Navy, with the sailors who used to come through here. And the Pike Amusement Park was opened in 1902, and it lasted until the late 1970s when the city of Long Beach took away the lease that the amusement park had. It had gotten really run down, crime and stuff like that. I remember going here in the last days of the Pike Amusement Park. My grandfather took me down here. I was actually a little scared. There were a lot of people who were inebriated, kind of struggling with stuff. But I'm glad he took me here. I can actually say I've been to the Pike. I actually have a few souvenirs and buttons and things that people could buy when they went to the Pike back in the old days when things were a little more glamorous. They had a plunge down here, which was a huge pool. They also had an interesting ride, which I'll tell you about when we get just across the street here. So right down here where you see the Laugh Factory, and going down this way you see the pier. Well, right in here you had all these rides, and one of the most famous was called Laugh in the Dark. And it was supposed to be a scary ride with some wax figures inside. But in the latter days, people said it wasn't that scary at all. And the figures didn't look too realistic. Well, 1979, they were taking the ride apart. One of the dummies fell. Its arm broke off. Turned out, actually, there was a real body inside. It was a criminal who had died in 1911 in a police shootout and somehow had made his way, Elmer McCurdy made his way to Long Beach, California, where he became part of that ride. He's now buried in Oklahoma. But it was a wild and woolly place, but even the non-scary ride ended up being a little scary. While the Pike is gone, there are still some remnants of amusement down here. Here you see the swan boats. If we look over this way, you can see that there is a Ferris wheel, along with an overpass that kind of resembles or evokes the Cyclone Racer. And down here, you can see the entrance to the pier. And that's where the Rainbow Pier used to be. It was actually shaped like a U, and you could drive your car along the pier out across the water and then back to land again. And my grandparents talked about doing that. But again, a little bit left from those days. There's a Pike Museum here. At the very end, it wasn't called the Pike, though. It was called the New Pike, and then eventually it was called Queen's Park. And the reason it was called Queen's Park is because right past here in 1967, they brought in an ocean liner called the Queen Mary. And many of you have been there and have seen that. And they were hoping to make it into a hotel, which it still is today, and bring in tourists for tours and turn this into a new type of entertainment venue. And it's finally starting to take off. So the Pike is no longer, but the name the Pike is still applied to the shopping outlet here, the Pike Outlets. And of course, you got a few rides here and a museum. Now, as we get ready to go up the bluffs and enter time here where the old Pike was located, I should mention that right down this way, if you come here in the spring, most years in April, you'll hear the scream of Formula racing here. The Long Beach Grand Prix actually uses these streets we see right here as a race course, an open wheel road racing course. And it's really fun to come down here. Even if you don't buy tickets for the race, you can go up on the bluff up here and stand, and for free, you can watch preliminary races down here on the streets of Long Beach, and they race all through here. Now, if you're interested in history a little bit more, the oldest tattoo shop, which in America was located at the Pike, and it's still there today, Burt Grimm's. Here's the old Cyclone Racer. It lasted until 1969. This right here is the Rainbow Pier that I was mentioning that you could drive around out onto the water. The Queen Mary, which used to sail on the Atlantic, has been in Long Beach since 1967. There's so much still going on down here in the old Pike area, including the Long Beach Grand Prix. Well, I hope you enjoyed our visits to Long Beach, and if you're thinking that I left something out, you're right. There's so many more things I wish I could share with you, but I'm trying not to go too long with this. I hope I at least got you a little bit interested in showing you some cool places in Long Beach. There's so much more to see. This is our last stop in Long Beach, the last stop of our three-part journey here, and I thought we'd end with a church. So let's take a look at this place. It's pretty amazing. So this is the First Congregational Church, and it's absolutely beautiful. It reminds me a lot of the architecture at USC. But do you notice that it's a combination of styles? Look at the rounded windows here, topped by a great rose window. You see the columns up above. Yeah, this is definitely both Romanesque and Gothic. They're mixing the styles here, but it works pretty well. But again, the windows aren't pointed, they're rounded, and yet you see the huge rose window here. Now, this church was built in 1914, and it was built with brick from the Los Angeles Brick Company. Here's a little closer detail here. Beautiful, beautiful church. Inside there's a pipe organ that actually has over 4,000 pipes. But what really impresses me about this place is that in 2004, it was in great danger. It wasn't earthquake safe. It's a masonry structure, which doesn't work that well in Southern California due to earthquakes. And they had to save this somehow, but they didn't want to damage the architecture itself. So what they did is they drilled down into the walls and they inserted steel bars down into the walls to support the bricks. And then they injected a special grout into the pores of the bricks, as well as into the grout itself to kind of fill it and make it stronger. And so the church was totally safe. They didn't have to alter the architecture at all. And it's able to go on into the 21st century healthy and ready for another 100 years. Well, it's time to saddle up the Mustang and head back to the 714, heading back to Santa Ana, but this is not the last of my journeys. I hope you'll join me next time as we explore Southern California. God bless you and have a great day.